if you've gone through the process of learning about dating and went through a dating coach and then you read a book about sales, you'd be like, shit, this is kind of the same thing, right?
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, we have Darren Gallop, who is the CEO and co-founder of Carbide, a company dedicated to providing enterprise-class security and privacy management solutions accessible to organizations of all sizes. Darren's extensive experience in cybersecurity and his innovative approach to integrating information security best practices has been pivotal in driving Carbide's growth and success, which is why we're excited to have him on the show. Darren, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is mine. To get things started here, Darren, I'd love to kind of get a quick little couple minutes on who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the CEO of Carbide.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of just weird discoveries and fluke turns and discoveries along the way. I started my career in the music industry predominantly, so my path has been, I did a couple of years of university, dropped out, started a band. And, did that for about 3 or 4 years. That didn't go super well. And then, just went and did some other music work as a session player for quite some time. And then, ended up with a band pretty seriously for about 6 or 7 years. Near the tailing end of that, I sort of gotten more and more, and I really liked the studio. So, we recorded a lot in both the bands, and I really liked that experience. And I started to do more work in the studio. So it was like my own bands in the studio. Then it was like playing on other people's records in the studio. And then it was like engineering stuff for my own bands. And eventually I was engineering records for other people and co-producing records and producing records and all that stuff. Started a record label. And then the entire, the music industry really took a huge transition. And so I didn't really, I was kind of tired of it too. Like I was working insane hours for pretty low pay, I guess, ultimately all in. And then it was like, oh wait, this is even going to get worse. And I wanted to do something else. And so I started my first tech company in 2008. And it was actually a software company, software as a service, I think back before we were really using terminology like it's in the cloud and things like that. So it was a niche product. We focused on music festivals because that was really in my life and career. The only thing I really knew was music and all of the sort of transcendental industries in and around music. And so, we started with local, like I'm based in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. We started working with local festivals. We built a product to manage sort of that back end logistics. And then by 2013, we were the back end of Coachella. We were Burning Man, Bonnaroo, Just for Laughs Festival. We've had some sporting events like X Games. By the time we sold the company in 2018, we were in like 23, 24 different countries. We had close to 280 festivals. So it was a pretty cool ride. And we had a successful exit there, which was a great experience. And it was actually in that journey, I would say it was about 2014, that really security started to become a real big challenge for that business, because the scope of the size of the festivals and these corporate-owned events that were owned by Disney and AEG and Live Nation, they were obviously looking at security and data privacy from a bit of a different lens than the smaller community-based festivals were. And we ended up in that time we did a SOC 2 audit. We started building a penetration testing program into the business. We had all kinds of uptime requirements, so our tool was critical infrastructure for those. For those events, and therefore couldn't go down for, very small window of acceptable downtime. Let's put it that way. So, a lot of confidential data. There was a lot of interest from thrill hackers of getting access to the lineups of music festivals before they were announced and stuff. So we ended up doing a SOC 2. We ended up building an ISO program. The last thing we did before I sold the company was the implementation of GDPR, the European General Data Protection Regulation. So that was what really brought me into cybersecurity very heavily. And in doing all that, managing that as a small business, it was very challenging because most of the industry was designed around enterprise security for big enterprises. And it was a lot of stuff like the network and the perimeter, and a lot of the businesses were on-prem and traditional. And so navigating how to translate all these requirements that were being asked upon us by our enterprise customers into what made sense in our world seemed a little Pathfinder-ish. And we found ourselves going between various consultants, being creative, solving some of the problems on our own. And then that just led to, identifying a really big opportunity. And so I started thinking about it as an opportunity, a big complex problem that was obviously going to be more complex and a bigger problem for a lot of folks. I was also monitoring what was going on the criminal side, and it's very obvious that organized criminal groups were seeing at the time the opportunities in cybercrime over some of the traditional black market industries, and just thought it'd be a cool business. And I love them. I love the music industry, but you only live once, and it's cool to. I saw a good opportunity to do something interesting and learn a lot more. So started working on this sort of while we were selling Mercado and going through that process of selling the company, the festival software company. I was really like just constantly working on this idea that I had about like how do we create this to make it more manageable, automate it, modernize it, translate it into the modern business. And that's effectively, that's kind of how I stumbled upon it. So it's weird coming from being a singer and guitar player and drummer and record recording engineer to, being the CEO of a cybersecurity company and getting a bunch of cybersecurity and data privacy certifications. I never would have thought this is the route I was going to take or be in. I probably wouldn't even understood what it was if somebody had to come and go back to my 20-something-year-old self and tell me what I'm going to be doing in 25 years. I'd probably I don't even know what you're talking about. So
it's funny.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, I relate to that because when I was, coming up through high school, one of the things that I remember is that the options of things that you could do were very limited. You were either going to be a mechanic or work in one of three trades, and that was all you had. And fast forward now 20 years, how am I recording podcasts for a business as a part of a marketing engine? I just never saw that being a thing. So I can kind of relate to that idea of like accidentally stumbling into it. But there are what I call translatable skills that you develop over time and in the things that you do when you're pursuing something that you have a passion for. I wonder, Darren, if you could talk to how some of those early skills kind of shaped your approach in the work that you're doing with Carbide.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, ultimately, being the founder of a business, a technology business, or any business, whether you're selling widgets or you're selling software, there's so much that's the same, right? So, and when I look at cybersecurity, in fact, when I first looked at it, it's evolved quite a bit. I'm not the only person that has seen the opportunities to modernize and bring it into the modern world. But yeah, I guess it was pretty dry. It was very technical. And it wasn't overly successful. In other words, if you look at the educational programs, the certifications at the time, how people train for it, it often was people that came from technical backgrounds. And it was given words like IT security, and it was something that was always thrown at the IT department. And we look at where most breaches and most challenges happen. A lot of the breaches are derived from a human element, right? There's some sort of social engineering concept where the attacker gains, whether it's knowledge or access or something that's critical to their penetration into a business to execute whatever the payload or whatever their objectives is. So much of that is human, and you can protect all the IT to the best of your capacity, but you still have that human element that's so critical. So that was one side. The other side is engagement. Like, it can't be viewed as an us against them thing, which I think a lot of businesses still operate that way. The IT security guys are here to give us a slap on the wrist and catch us for clicking on bad things. And like, I wish these guys would screw off and let us do our jobs. And, there was a little bit of that. So like some creativity and sort of like try to think about it in a way where you can make it important to people, right? And so I thought there was a lot of creativity opportunity. The other side as well is when I look at, and I've done so many implementations of taking businesses that don't have a cybersecurity company and don't have a culture of security by design, privacy by design, and trying to navigate them to that, the skill that's the most critical to taking an organization, getting leadership's buy-in and messaging and actually moving people to changing the way they think about things and ultimately how they act, that is leadership. It's not IT. It's not technical. It's what we call often today the soft skills, which are kind of hard for most of the people. And in fact, a lot of times, and it's not uncommon to see, very strong technical cybersecurity experts, they struggle with the soft skills, right? So I saw a lot of opportunity, and I think I saw that initially, but I would say that's something that really has become obvious to me in the later years, as the company, as Carbide evolves and what our offering has evolved to, is it's the leadership, it's the communication, it's the creativity, it's understanding people, it's being able to position change and guide change. And if you can do that, the technology ends up, in my opinion, most of the time being the easy things. There's all kinds of products off the shelf that you can buy that can be technically implemented into a network or into a software solution that can be very helpful in maintaining a security posture. But you need the interest, you need the change, you need people to identify risk, you need to create a change in how people look at the problem. And that part, I go back to like, when it comes to like trying to manage people, it's not that different than, when you're producing a record and you're trying to get the person who comes in with their song that's so dear to them. And so, they're so passionate about it, and trying to help them get a recording of that song that is something that will be received by humans and that will actually have a chance of being successful in what they're trying to achieve from a career perspective. And you're dealing with egos and attitudes, and that's leadership. So I think a lot of what I did in that early parts of my career have been super effective in my ability to go into conversations with groups of people, including leadership and some of their subordinates, and be able to be really clear and articulate and transparent and work with them in a way that's impactful.
I'm rarely surprised by the lack of skill when it comes to communicating that most people have. And so when you're talking about this idea of leading people into making decisions that are going to be beneficial, that idea of communicating with them in a way that will land, I get is like very nuanced, right? It's a difficult path to navigate, and once you do arrive there, it opens up a whole other door of other things now that you have to be able to effectively communicate, because it's not just about, hey, let's get you to where the solution exists. Now it's like, how do we keep the maintenance of this solution functioning inside of your business and get everybody enrolled in it? That's a hard thing to do, is get everybody enrolled in it.
And so many businesses, especially these smaller businesses, they look at this cybersecurity challenge as like, oh, we're just gonna like do this thing, and then then we don't have to worry, like it's just gonna be done, right? It's so not like that. I make the analogy, it's like an exercise and diet program, right? You can't just like blast through going to the gym and eating kale smoothies every day for 6 months, get ripped, and then expect, okay, I did it. Now I can drink beer, eat pizza, and sit on my ass and maintain this chiseled physique. No, that's not how it works, right? And that's how everything is. It's all about habit formation and about indoctrination into your culture and having it be led by in an exemplary way from the top down. If the CEO doesn't give a shit about the security program and violates openly and just like rolls his eyes or his or her eyes at things, then that's going to reflect how everybody treats it, because that's the example, which is more powerful than the words. So, you're totally you're totally hitting it on the bullseye there. That's really that's where companies struggle. Like, I actually just did an analysis over the last couple of days. We did an experiment where I worked directly with taking 10 customers through a journey where they were like, they clearly aren't able to do this on their own. They need guidance. Mm-hmm. And 8 of them were successful in a very respectful time frame to meet their objectives and build what they need to build. And time will tell how the maintenance program, the long term is. But the 2 that failed have one really blatantly obvious thing in common, which is leadership challenge at the top of the business. Mm. The leader is not driving the agenda. The leader sees this as a pain in his or her ass and doesn't really want to deal with it. Ultimately, ideally would have a magical wand that would make the customers stop asking for their SOC 2 audit or their data security questions. Like, they would just have a badge, like a magic wand that just makes the problem go away, because they don't see the problem as a problem that's their problem. They see it that it's red tape or just kind of BS that their customer is making them go through. And then you just see all this like in every one of those organizations, it's not a technical skills challenge that defines who's successful and who's not. It's the efficiency of that operation, which all really comes down to leadership. If you have a business of 20, 30, 50 people and it's disruptive, it's ridden with politics, and there's no clear understanding of roles and responsibilities, you can't do anything. So like, I look at those businesses that failed there. I don't know all of their projects outside of the security component and how they're doing in sales and revenue, but I would bet that there's a trend.
Right. There's a common theme.
Yeah.
Thread kind of weaving through it all.
Leadership problem that
right.
we're seeing in their inability to get through a reasonable load of work at a reasonable time frame in developing and deploying a security program. So that's the commonality that I discovered. I mean, this is we're not taking a highly scientific approach to this, and this is only a group of 10 people. So, but that was the blatant observation that I had, is that the ones that flew through it really quickly, there was really good culture. Everybody knew their role. They knew their lane. There was leadership involvement. Communication was open and clear. There was no barking or blame games or any of that kind of office politics bullshit that really derives from people not having the social skills to effectively be great, to be their best at whatever it is they're doing. So, and those are the ones, like there's one organization in particular, they just blew through everything and they just passed their SOC 2 and it was phenomenal. But there were two really strong leaders and just really good at everybody worked well together. And that's what makes success. I don't care if you're talking about building a house or building a software company or building a band or making a record. I think that is the core nucleus of success. It's leadership, it's the social skills, it's the soft skills. When more than one human has to collaborate to achieve a goal that's somewhat difficult, that is the piece that I bet on. If they have that, they'll succeed. If they don't, they won't.
Well, and part of it too is, I think, finding the right collection of people and putting them together in a way that is a cohesive, functioning business. Like, for example, there's this book I read a long time ago called Rocket Fuel, and it's the idea of taking a visionary and an integrator and connecting them. Some people are visionary, they have a lot of ideas, but the follow-through isn't there. Some people don't have a lot of ideas, but just want to make things happen. And so when you put those two things together, and this is just a, kind of a, one of dozens of examples of different personality types that you could put together to make something successful. So I guess, Darren, then when it comes to empowering your team or empowering teams to kind of see this through, what's your strategy? Like, what sorts of tools or ideas do you kind of implement to maintain the lubrication in the team so that they can do the thing that they're meant to do?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, this is a topic it's a very easy topic. Like, it's not complicated, but it's really hard. So what I mean by that is, like, conceptually, I think we can all agree this all makes sense. And there's tons of models out there. And there's tons of books that cover all these areas. There's tons of courses that cover these areas. Translating it from data, knowledge, which is the easy part, into habit, into practice, right? So I think that's the big part. What do I do? Well, I mean, I've witnessed failure in our own business in doing that. So when I look at Mercado, we grew at a reasonable velocity. We at no point did we ever go out and get like experts or, executives, expensive executives from larger, more successful companies. We found people with aptitudes. We focused on a culture. We worked really well together and we were very effective. Did we do everything right? Absolutely not. We screwed up all the time. We were learning. We were making it as we were figuring it out as we were doing it. But there was such a good camaraderie and team vibe that so many people lifted one another up. And a lot of the value that came from that, sometimes we take for granted the things we get right, because we don't feel the pain of getting them wrong, right? So, right. And I reflect on that company. We got that right. We didn't do it deliberately so that I can recollect upon. It's just we did it in some ways because we were cheap and we didn't really know anybody that had the executive experience. In this company, we raised capital and we spent a lot of capital really quickly because we had pressure to grow the company really quickly. We went out and got experts and we went out and got people that have been there, done that. And it didn't work.
Mm.
It just didn't work, right? And so those people brought their own expectations of what a company should be. They came with really a high degree of confidence. There was, I think, as leaders, this all happened at the same time that we went from being in person in an office to remote. And to be a good leader in a remote environment is less natural than being a good leader to tap it into your leadership skills in a group. Communicating, you have to be so much more deliberate about everything that you do to build a culture in a business when people aren't actually working in the same room. It's kind of unnatural. We're humans. We're not soul creatures that just run around scurrying and doing our own thing. We're very social creatures. So to take away some of these physical components of social interaction in the work environment is not natural. I'm not saying it's not doable. Most people fail at it, in my belief, because you have to develop a deliberate strategy to do that. So, one of the things that I did as I sort of licking my wounds and understanding that we kind of screwed this up as we kind of reverted back to restructuring our business to accommodate what we realized we need to be doing to keep this business true to a very focused target objective. One of the things I did is I went back to school over the year, and I'm a dropout. I dropped to the university, so I went on Coursera. It's like you could take courses for free or like very cheap. I took some modern courses in some newer courses from reputable universities on leadership, on all these soft skills, and like a lot of it's stuff that I've read tons of books, watched tons of podcasts, got all kinds of little pointers. But there was a lot of good validation that was really helpful for me personally and professionally. And then there was a lot of really good models that I was able to use and exercise as a practice. And I think a lot of things that historically I was thought, I grew up in Cambridge Island, Nova Scotia. This is like a rough, rural, like, shut up, don't be a wimp, do your work, stop whining kind of attitude as what I grew up in. Right. So like, breaks, meditation, like what, what's next? What are you going to be doing next? Right. So like, and those things are really valuable. Like I do those things now. I used to work at my last company. I'd be like, sleep when I'm dead. Right. Like, well, you'll be dead sooner if you take that approach. Right. And, you might have that physical resilience to beat the shit out of yourself a little harder when you're in your 20s. As you get into your 40s and late 30s, 40s, your wisdom, your wisdom should be start to compensate. You shouldn't have to work that hard. And I'm not saying you don't have to work hard, but like just practices, right? Like looking after yourself, the value in not using alcohol or pot or whatever your crutch is as your way to like take the edge off at the end of the day. I'm not saying never have a puff or never have a drink or never enjoy that. But if you get into a habit of having a drink every day or have 3 or 4 drinks every day, that's not going to help you in the long term. It'll give you it'll give you that little rush, that little feeling of joy, but it's not cumulatively going to help you. So like those habits, right? Eating better, not drinking or consuming substances to the same velocity, sleeping properly, spending time with your friends and family, getting social experiences with people that matter, that you're close to, that aren't your employees. Like these are, I would say that's the core thing of extra, like things that I've done that have been impactful in my life is like, you're on a plane and they're like, okay, if all of a sudden shit goes down here and all these masks drop from the ceiling, you're there, your family, your knee-jerk reaction is like, start saving your family. But, they always remind you, put your mask on first, make sure, because you being able to do more, like instead of just like, helping your first kid and your wife, and then your brother and your other kid don't make it because you're gone, right? So it's like, look after you so you can have that endurance. So thinking about things less of a sprint and thinking of it more like it's consistency, man. It's like, it's not about doing the most I can today. It's about nurturing the ability to progressively and consistently deliver on a high level. So I think, that was kind of the first one. Meditation took me a while to get into, and then it's the practice, it's the discipline to do that, right? To find the ways to do that. Then there's you can find 1,000 different methodologies and this breathing technique and that breathing technique. I've tried a lot of them. I find they all kind of do the same thing. It's all about, timing out and focusing on some more simple things, right? But that's critical. I think educating yourself constantly and reading about what other people are doing and is also a very critical piece. Even if it seems redundant, if you're not doing it and you're not doing it expertly, then keep reading about it until you are. Keep reading about it till you can write about it, right? So So that for me is a big discipline. I think it's like that those physical needs. We're humans, right? Our brain, it's not a muscle physiologically, but if you think of it and as an analogy, metaphorically as a muscle, it's not incorrect to say it's the same thing. You can't just do push-ups. If you do push-ups until you can't do push-ups, like what would be the best way to do the most amount of push-ups in a week? It's not to try to sit through them all right now, right? It's like it's create up resistance, rest. Your brain works the same way, and there's tons of studies around that. So I think if for people to as an exercise, I would say find the exercises, find the sources of education that are the best for you. But think like when you're thinking about educating yourself to be better at what you're doing in your business, don't always think of the technical and the business things and the marketing and the sales and all that's important. But think about the how do you perform? How do you control your emotions? How do you develop self-awareness in your own self so you can lead in an exemplary way? And then as you get better at these things yourself, you can help your people that you're leading also get better at, which rises everybody in the whole culture in the company.
I'm smiling because the thing that you mentioned about, going out and finding and developing these skills, because it's not just about sales, it's not just about marketing, it's not just about operating a business. The funny thing to me is that a majority of the things that I learned that made me successful as a salesperson, I learned from a dating coach because I had no idea, being a computer nerd, how to talk to girls when I was young.
Right.
And so some of those, this again, this transferable skills that you kind of learn over here that actually apply in so many different areas of your life, getting your mind in the right headspace, getting your body in the right physical space, getting the sleep, all these things are really valuable to keeping you productive and happy, because those two things come hand in hand. Find a responsibility that is bigger than self, take it on, and stay dedicated to that thing. And that's where you get your meaning and your purpose and your joy from accomplishing things, because you are of use and you are helpful to other people. And I think that that's such a huge part, at least from what I'm picking up of, your approach, the way that you do what you do. I wonder if maybe you could kind of unpack for me how some of these transferable skills have now been leveraged to help you find and get customers for the business.
Yeah. So I love your learning about sales from a dating coach because I use the analogy a lot when I'm coaching people on sales. I was like, well, okay, let's turn this around. Let's imagine you're asking somebody to go on a date with you. Would you do this? Well, that's kind of what you did metaphorically, right? So, so like I mean, if you're going out, if you're a single person out there trying to find a companion, whether it be short, mid, or long-term objective, you're selling yourself, which is obviously a much more personal thing. So obviously the rejection in sales sucks. Rejection in dating world is like that takes a lot of those soft skills to be able to have the confidence to take, you can be an SDR getting told to go to hell all day long. And
Right.
that's the different than, you're not, how many times can you be told, yeah, I'm not interested, or let's just be friends? That takes a little bit more strength to surmount. But a lot of the stuff I always use, these a question, the analogy of dating in selling, right? So,
Mm.
and so if I think about my career, like everything's sales. Going out and getting a job, it's sales. Like everybody needs to have the ability, if you want to have, trying to negotiate with your wife to determine which house you're going to buy, or like whether you're buying a pool or a boat, or like all these things we're selling something in these engagements and these conversations. So I think it's very transferable. I think sales gets a stigma. It gets a bad name. I know in the music industry, I had a horrible, everybody I work with was like, well, we're going to have to sell. Oh, I don't want to talk about sales. And like, I'm just an artist. I'm cool and creative. And it's like, well, yeah. And it's no longer, you're not an EMI can't signed artist in 1992. So like, no one's coming along to make you rich and famous. So like,
Yeah.
you
Good
better
luck,
figure out how
buddy.
to sell this shit, or it's not selling. It's going to be like a vanity project, and you're going to be doing a job. And this is going to be your hobby. So, so yeah, I mean, I think all of this stuff is transferable, and I like sales a lot. I like a consultative sale, and I think the products and services that I've built most of my career require that, outside of the selling records and that kind of stuff. But I like that kind of sale where it's a lot about, it's not going in for the kill. And this has been a challenge we've had because I'm like, look, we got to change our thinking around this. Like I when I coach sales folks, sometimes they come in too hot. They're like, okay, cool. I'll send a quote over for, they're like, whoa, pump the brakes, right? I mean, it's like and if I was making the analogy, it's like, well, you're going on your first date. Are you going to be, or are you going to be asking her to come back to your house for sex before you even ordered the first course of the meal? Like, no, that's what you're doing when you're coming in and there's a conversation, and like, you have to be patient. You have to build rapport. Now, obviously sales varies on what you're selling. If you're selling a $5 product or a $500 product or a $5,000, 50,000, 500,000, there's a different degree of how much courting and how this this goes. But everything I've done has always been, okay, well, let's get into a conversation. I want to learn about your business and understand your problem, and I want to make sure that I actually have a real solution, that I can provide a solution to you where I can be a very good solution for you, not just just close all the business. Because every time you close a deal that's not a good deal for you and them mutually, that stuff comes back to haunt you. In the long term, it actually creates a lot more damage, I believe, in a sales process. When you got people out there that are unhappy, you start swimming upstream, and that gets really tough, right? So I think it's all very transferable. I think, like, if you've gone through the process of learning about dating and went through a dating coach, and then you read a book about sales, you'd be like, shit, this is kind of the same thing, right?
How are these exactly the same? And why did I not see that this whole
Yeah,
time?
yeah.
It's probably why I was bad at both, if we're being honest. But
And I don't
thank
think people should
goodness.
think about it. The only way sales is negative, and unfortunately, there's a lot of negative sales out there that give salespeople a bad name. It's like
Mhm.
there's all kinds of people, and I think or leadership makes this mistake sometimes. When you solely compensate, when you develop a system where you compensate your SDRs to book meetings, then they book meetings. Doesn't mean they book good meetings. Just means they book meetings, which may, and they're checking their boxes, hitting their quota, and getting their spiff or whatever. Same thing with sales reps. If you're just like close deals and that's it, you just get them in the door. And if it gets flushed down the shitter 3 months later, it's not my problem. I'm the sales guy. Like, you build that culture, then that can generate an illusion of a strong business early on, because you'll have a lot of sales because you got these people that are just selling everything. I will figure it out. And then but then that comes back to haunt you, right? So, when sales teams are motivated, leadership allows for that type of selling activity, then that creates, I think, a bad name for sales. But when you think about sales as like, well, look, if we get in a sales conversation, and you're describing your problems and what you need done and the time frame, and if we can't, as a team on my side, come back and say, well, this is a slam dunk, we'll crush this shit, right? If we can't do that, us saying, if we're like, yeah, I don't. Well, we need the numbers. Like, it's, we need the quarter. We got a board meeting, investors, and to kind of close this round. Just deal with it. Let's close the deal. We'll figure it out. Like, that's bad sales, right? That's bad sales. That's bad business, right? So if you're actually finding somebody, listening to their problem, and it's a real problem that they want to pay money for to solve, and you can solve it, then you're doing them a favor by selling to them.
Right. And how dare you not? Like, there's a responsibility
Yeah,
to
like,
it.
dude.
There's a problem here, and I can solve it. I should be doing something. There's
Yeah,
and I get
yeah.
that. That was I don't know, that was a mindset shift for me too. And for anybody that's listening, that's the big change, is like, okay, you have a duty to do your job, whatever that thing is that you're good at. People need you. So go find them and show them that you can help them, and then help them, because that's what we're all in this for. From some existential perspective, we're all kind of in this together to achieve something. So to that regard, I guess, Darren, we're kind of coming to the close here of our time together. Everything you've shared here has just been of tremendous value. And beyond this, what are you aiming at? What's kind of on the horizon, or in the future for the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we're like every other company on the planet, I'm sure, or most of them. We're always trying to take advantage of the latest developments in technology to have a more impactful experience for our customers, right? So, I don't flash around the artificial intelligence card, because it's, we're not a data scientist company. We don't have a whole bunch of data scientists that are building custom LLMs, but there certainly is technology, artificial intelligence technology and LLM technology that we've been able to utilize to enhance both our service offerings as well as our product. And we've done a tremendous amount of evolution and innovation to our own products and services by leveraging that to make sure that the time that our humans, both us and our customer, are on the things that the humans need to do. So, we lean on LLMs for generating some of the administrative stuff like report generation, document generation, stuff like that in a big way. And we're continuing to do that, and we look forward to seeing, I mean, the combination, mostly excitement, a little bit of fear of like where this goes as we get into future iterations of some of these big predominant LLMs out there. But yeah, I mean, like we are looking, and this is I think the big transition that we did at our company a little less than a year ago is transitioning from trying to think of ourselves in that investment lens, right? That venture capital lens of a pure software as a service company, and try to shut that noise up a little bit and focus on, well, what does the customer really need? And what we found in that is a really interesting space where we've been focusing our process innovation, our initiatives, our packaging, and our product innovation, which is humans that can help, that can, we talked about these leadership challenges. We talked about these how do we help these companies understand what the barriers that they have to solve them from being able to be where they need to be. And, if we have the right people on the team that are able to help those companies do that. I don't want them writing reports and writing lengthy emails so this is where we've been really heavily innovating, is taking the sessions we have with customers and having the LLMs and some of those tools be able to generate really strong content and really strong guidance and just really automate that experience. So that's going to be paramount. That's going to continue to be paramount for us. How do we give a customer the absolute best experience and reduce, like, people, like, in the perfect world, we do the things we love and that require that human component, and we have the robots doing the things that are repetitive. And you can probably already guess in your analogy earlier of, the people that like to do repetitive process and the people that are more creative, where I sit on that spectrum. So, yeah, that's it. I love, like, when I got my first ChatGPT, I think it was I don't know, it was 3.0 or 3.5 when it's like back in, I guess, November or something of 2023 time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, it changed a lot of things for me, right? It changed the way I use ChatGPT predominantly, I would say, like in my own, like, just chatbot AI LLM. I just find it really fascinating, and I've made tons of custom bots just around how I do my work, right? Just like processing things and like taking this and making it this and like helping me craft a post or help me craft, like, I type all of the things, but I use it to help me in so many ways. I feel like it's almost like this digital companion that
Right.
if it was to go away, I'd be like, whoa, what am I going to do now? Right. So
Yeah, there's a weird dependency that I too share with this.
yeah,
It's nice to have the way I think about it is like a little friend, although sarcastic and sometimes difficult to work with. It's nice to have a friend that knows everything.
yeah.
You could just springboard.
But sometimes it makes mistakes. So there's also like, you gotta be very weary. Like, I love using it when it's something I know, so I can be like, wait a minute, that's not right.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the bit of the area, or the arena of risk. If you're wandering in and expecting it to be right all the time, that's failed me a few times as well.
Yeah, it's dangerous if you don't know your friend well enough. You can be tricked into saying some
Yeah.
very foolish things. But
And hopefully the next iteration will, it'll even, our friend will be upgraded substantially and
right.
less prone to error.
Yeah, hopefully Elon Musk steps back in and fixes some of these problems. Uh,
Maybe.
on that note, Darren, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm very grateful for everything that you've shared here. To kind of wrap things up, I wonder if there was a single piece of advice that you could offer somebody out there who's kind of working on building their business and exploring some of the ideas that we've talked about today. What would that piece of advice be?
Treat yourself really well from the get-go. Don't defer. Don't create this concept of deferred you're going to be good, or you're going to have time to rest, or you're going to pay yourself, and you're going to be able to look after yourself. Make sure you look after yourself through the whole process. This is not a sprint. And enjoy the ride. Like, I know all kinds of people that are really successful and they're not really necessarily always that happy. Enjoy the ride. Look after yourself.
I love that. Have a good time, drink some water, get some sleep.
You got her. That's great. I like it.
If somebody wanted to reach out to you, Darren, to pick your brain further or perhaps work with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I'm super active on LinkedIn. It's probably the only social network that I am active on, and it's because it's it's super related to what I do in Carbide, but also in my longer term career goals. So follow, connect, DM me, Darren Gallop. There might be one other one, but it'll be really obvious which one is me. Cybersecurity, music background. I'm the only one. It's not a very common name. So yeah, that's a great way. And if you want to connect with me, if you're interested in security or what we do as a company. So if you're a company and you're trying to look at data security, data privacy, we're starting to get into AI governance as well. You can go to carbidesecure.com, to our website, and learn more about what the company does.
Beautiful. I'll make sure to link to all that stuff in the show notes. And if you wanted to get in touch with me and my team for any reason as it relates to marketing, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining me. I will see you in the next.